Good afternoon, viewers. Today we have a very young and enterprising human rights Aarti Agarwal. She is from Delhi and she's working in the fields of human rights for quite some time now. Let's hear from Aarti ji what her activities related to human rights activities is all about, and a brief background of her activities. Aarti ji, welcome to Epilogue.
Thank you.
Aarti ji, can you tell us about your activities in this domain, or in the domain of human rights?
Yes, certainly. So, we have been working very actively in researching and documenting violations of human rights, first of all. And then, secondly, understanding why these violations happen. And thirdly, figuring out what are the most viable means of correcting these human rights violations in the future, preventing them from happening. Because when I talk about human rights, there are many types of human rights. So why are these human rights violations happening? Who are the people? And is there a pattern? Because many times when you see, it is not just isolated incidents which happen in Delhi or in Kerala or in Gujarat. There is, if you see the entire data of these violations of human rights, or what I would want to call as a genocide, there is a distinct pattern in which the crimes happen. So we are trying to use databases, data analytics and research to understand how historically these things have happened and what part of that history is repeating itself now.
So you are connected to an NGO. You are doing this activity under the banner of an NGO.
Yes.
What's the name of this NGO?
Ishitwa Dharm Sansthapan Foundation. And the foundation is basically just helping us with the research. It is the bigger picture of the foundation is to help in correcting the Hindu human rights and animal rights. So we work on both the aspects and trying to understand in what way we can design better policies to correct these.
You talk about Hindu genocide. Hindu genocide is a term which has largely been unreported in the contemporary world. When world is talking about Jewish genocide, Jewish Holocaust, the Armenian genocide, uh, media or the world, or even in India, we don't hear much about Hindu genocide. Just lay some light on the what Hindu genocide is all about, actually, because of last 1300 years. When we talk about, there's a lot of there are many genocidal. This is genocidal war that has taken place on Hindus in India. Please shed some light on this.
So, the Hindu genocide term may be used only recently, but the fact that the Hindu genocide has been happening has been overshadowed for centuries. So, starting from the time of the Islamic invasions, this type of a genocide has been going on very ruthlessly and very relentlessly. So some people believe that the genocide happened only at that time. Some people believe that, we are facing a lot of atrocities now. But my personal belief and what I always say is that there was never a pause in this genocide or on the atrocities. The only pause is in the documentation of the crimes. There is a gap in how we have documented our historical crimes and how we are documenting it now. But there is actually no gap. If you see in the Islamic invasions period itself, if you just see from the 6th to say roughly the 15th century, the number is 440 million as recorded by a historian of the 15th century, an Islamic historian named Farishta. He has written a very big book on it, which has a translation. He himself has given the figure that the number was close to 440 million Hindus either murdered or raped or forcibly converted to Islam. So forcible conversion, where you have to choose between life and accepting another ideology as your own, is a genocide because you're destroying everything the person believes in and lives for. For Hindus, it is not just a question of just a set of do's and don'ts. It is a life. Me going to temple or being able to offer puja to my Ishta Devata is my life. That is what I live for. That is my
It's part of
fuel.
our life, yes.
Right. No, it is not a part of my life. It is
It is
my
life.
life.
Okay, it is
And
life, yes.
now maybe we may be very alienated from these aspects of Hinduism, but back then in the 6th century, we were not so alienated from our spiritual practices and our bhakti, which drove us, right? So this kind of a genocide has been very horrifying. I won't have time to get into a whole lot of details, but there were times when, the emperors celebrated their victory by slaying 1 lakh Hindus in one day. in Delhi, in Kashmir, in all the parts of North India where they had their dominion, where they showed their power. It was a demonstration of their power to all their subjects. That this is what we will do to you. This is what we will do if you don't convert to Islam, if you don't pay jizya. So even jizya was one of the ways of controlling Hindus and taking their wealth into their hands. What they wanted was dominion over Hindus. And if you move forward a little bit, so the same kind of trend continued during the Portuguese Inquisition of India. They continued similar kind of crimes against Hindus for converting Hindus to Christianity. They were very, very fanatic in their beliefs, to the extent that Hindus were not publicly allowed to celebrate any aspect of the religion. Even their ceremonies like marriage and deaths, they had to do within closed doors in their private homes. They could not do it publicly.
There are
Yes.
instances, yes, many
Yes, and this is
instances
not isolated instances. This was a law. This
when
was
we
a law.
when we talk about genocide and its definition by the United Nations, we somewhere feel that it falls short of expressing the proper genocidal war that has taken place in the subcontinent. How do you address this? Because when we go through the genocidal definition of United Nations, it only talks about extermination. It does not talk about cultural genocide.
See, the cultural genocide has been grossly overlooked on a global scale, because in other religions, that's what I think, places of worship and their culture is not so integrated into their personal belief. For example, a mosque is a gathering hall, it's not sacred. A church is again a prayer hall. It's not sacred. There is no element of sacredness to it, because this sacredness is only for God or Allah, who they think is not in form. Whereas in Hindus, we very much worship Ishvara in form. That's our Hindu temples are sacred. When we do pran pratishtha to a deity, that deity is a living deity. And when you destroy that deity, you cannot offer any worship to that deity again. And when they destroyed the temples, it was to destroy our culture of idolatry, as they call it, because they hated idols. So, to the extent that Muhammad Ghazni, when he destroyed all the temples in India, he took the deities, the chief presiding deities of temples, and he took it back to to Ghazni, and he distributed it on the public pathways for Muslims to walk on it, to show that our religion is superior to yours, and we do not believe in your God. Your God belongs there under our feet. This was the kind of insult they did.
Unfortunately.
Yes. So these kind of places where they, of course, they looted our wealth, but what hurts most is not just the wealth, but these kind of horrifying insults on our sacred beliefs, because worship is a very important part of Hinduism, and they have hatred for that. So it is this Hindu hatred which has continued from Islamic invasions times till now. Even now, like I don't want to go too much into current news, but whenever there is any law, any act in favor of Hindus, there is always a lobby, an Hindu hate-filled lobby, which wants to dethrone Hindus. Hindu se azadi chahiye humko. These kind of slogans are what you hear. Whereas this is a democratic country, right? So this question of Hindu se azadi chahiye is coming from the time of this
Those Islamic
period.
periods.
That thought current has not changed.
The pattern is continuing.
Yes.
They want freedom. They want freedom from the Hindu thought. Yesterday was International Holocaust Day, and in the seminar yesterday in Press Club, you gave a staggering number, a very
Yes.
colossal number of 536 million Hindus who suffered genocide in this in this continuous pattern of genocidal war all along. So, how have we arrived at this number? Besides the example, you just gave an example of 430 something, which has been set up in the 15th century by Islamic historian itself. Beyond that, do we have any validation for this 536? Can you please?
So we have taken everything from historical records. We have not, we have not relied on modern books and modern historians who concoct history. So I am very sorry to say this, but the books of modern historians have absolutely no references. So it is a question of my word against theirs. Why the hell should I believe in the word of one Romila Thapad or one Ramchandra Guha who does not bother to give proper references for their facts? I want to know facts. Whether that number is big or small is not important to me. I want to know my real history. So we have gone and we have dug out books of the times of the British and of previous times. Unfortunately, Hindus did not record their own history. So there are books of the Portuguese Inquisition written by the Portuguese and written by Britishers. There are many books which were written in Persian, which were translated by Britishers during the 18th century. I'm talking about 18th century right now, not even 21st to 20th century. So we have dug out these ancient records of those period. We have the records of the books of Marco Polo, we have Aine Akbari, you have Humayun Nama, we have Babar Nama, you have many such books in which the emperors themselves have given their staggering figures because they take pride in it.
There should have been no ambiguity about them. But
Yes.
still we are in doubt.
So
if
because this this veracity has never been paid any attention to. People just believe whatever they are told. Now this number is looking very fancy suddenly. But if we had actually preserved this intellectual honesty in reporting our history, this number would have been a very common knowledge in people right now instead of looking like a very staggering figure. So even later on, during the British times, the British famines and the forced famines of the British, they caused a casualty of number no less than 85 million. And this was not an economic crisis. India was not in any economic crisis. This was a deliberately forced famine in Bihar, in Bengal, in Odisha, and it is documented. It was a policy of the British. It is not that we are trying to sort of fabricate a narrative around it. This is documented by them. So establishing slaughterhouses in India was a policy of the British. They wanted to establish it in India. The whole revolt of 1857 started because of this policy of British, which offended Hindus, because their cartridges were smeared with the beef fat, right? So these kind of things look very new and very fancy to us now, but the fact is that this is very much recorded history, and it is existing in ancient facts. So we have recorded all genocides from original books and original records, and because our database was getting hacked, they were trying to hack and corrupt our database. We have temporarily removed it from our website, but we will upload it very shortly to a secure place. We just wanted to secure the database. The website is hindugenocide.com, and we will upload this database with references there. Even now on our blog, you can find all the references for every genocide which is there on the blog. So
any activity your NGO or you have done on the genocide which has happened in Kashmir? Because quite recently the government of India said that 50,000 temples will be rebuilt.
Right.
That shows the amount and the magnitude of the genocide that has taken place in Kashmir for last 700-800 years. So has your organization done that?
Yes, we have documented the 7 exoduses of Kashmiri Hindus from the Kashmir Valley, because even now we are hearing at least about the 1990 genocide of Kashmiri Hindus. But before that as well, during the period of the Islamic rule in Kashmir, there were many such forced exoduses because of the atrocious religious hatred which the Islamic invaders had, and they imposed it on the people to save their lives and to save their culture. There were 7 exoduses in Kashmir of Kashmiri Hindus, and we have documenting it. We have documented it, and it's there on the website. And even after the 19 January incident, the murders and the rapes continued. It is not that it just ended there. It continued from there.
It's perpetual, actually.
Yes, and it had started even before that date. There were many incidents every few weeks. Every few weeks, there was one person killed here, one person shot there, one woman raped here. So because these are 1111 incidents, people don't pay attention to it. But that 1111 going on for several months suddenly becomes several hundred, right? And it is not a number you can ignore. See, I know that there is a lot of emphasis on numbers, but what I want to say is that if your relative, if your family member dies, even if that number is 1, it is not 1 for you. These are people who were living, who had a life, who had families, who died just because they were Hindu.
Certainly.
There was no other fault of theirs. So right now, when sometimes we start looking at data and we become very desensitized to what really that number means. So these were living people. So even if that number is one, it is not a small thing. That's what we feel.
Artiji, government has a very important role to play in such activities because it seems for last 70 years, the pattern of this thing was completely ignored by the government, willfully actually. Of late, we have seen the recognition at certain levels, certain quarter, though not completely, but to some extent, the recognition is there. They are registering something because when we see this Citizenship Amendment Act, were granting citizenship to Hindus, tormented, persecuted, genocide affected Hindus from Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Do you think that the government is showing that will to address it? Because all of us are doing this activity at our own levels, at a very miniature level, but government has a bigger role to play. What is your opinion about that? And the current day government, is it friendly to Hindus?
So I think these kind of acts like the Citizenship Amendment Acts will go, at least they will give an umbrella for persecuted Hindus. The act of rehabilitation itself is a different and more challenging one. So even after the scrapping of Article 370, the rehabilitation of Hindus in the Kashmiri Valley is still pending, because that rehabilitation is the second more difficult
Sorry,
part.
a small
Yeah.
intervention. Do you think that the victims of genocide can be accommodated or rehabilitated amongst those who are the perpetrators of that crime? Is it possible?
See, it needs to be made possible. It's not a question of whether it is possible or not. It was their homeland. I see it, of course, the Kashmiri Hindus are the ones who should have the first say in this, who have been driven out of their homes. But whatever I have understood based on talking to Kashmiri Hindus, I feel it was their homeland. See, when you have lived in your ancestral home since your childhood and suddenly you have to leave it and go away, it does not get erased from your memory that quickly. And I think that right needs to be restored to those Kashmiri Hindus who were driven out of their homes. They should be given their homes back. Like the Kashmiris had to leave everything and go. They did not even have bank accounts. They did not even have anything more than the clothes on their back sometimes. They just took whatever they could and they had to run for their lives. And their homes were all grabbed by the Kashmiri militants, Muslim militants in the valley. So that wrong has to be corrected, and there have to be taken some sensible measures to correct it. The question of whether it is possible or not is not something which I want to answer, because I think it is always possible. That is what I
interrupted you
believe.
when we are talking about the responsibility of the state
Yes.
today.
Yeah.
Do you think that the state is more responsible than before?
I think they are moving towards taking more responsibility towards Hindus, but I feel that there still is a lot of work to be done. Whether the government does it or not is up to them, but I think they should definitely consider it, because the Hindus who have been persecuted in India still need some correction. So, for example, we need a uniform civil code, because when a minor Hindu girl is, abducted or raped and is forcibly converted to Islam in India, after that the Hindu law no longer applies to them. Like the law does not apply to them. The Sharia law applies to that girl. Or even if a girl is, tricked into this love jihad, and once that girl is converted to Islam, it is a Sharia law which applies to her. So she can do absolutely nothing if her husband abandons her, or if she if she is given mistreatment, or whatever else happens to her is not within the ambit of the law. And these are some very big snags, very big loopholes in our legal system, which does not address the rights of Hindus even in India. And these kind of things have to be corrected. It may take time. I'm not saying everything can be done in a day, but these corrective measures should be continued. I think they have a very important role to play in correcting these measures.
Thank you, ma'am. So this was Aarti Agarwalji, a human rights activist who is working in this field for quite some time now, and she expressed herself completely on the human rights violations that have taken place in India ever since Islamic invasions happened. She gave a very staggering number of 536 million Hindus which have been affected in this genocidal wars, be it through Islamic violence or through colonial British powers. And as we could see that this Indian state is actively looking into the genocidal campaign which was unleashed on the Aboriginal Hindus of this land, and we are hopeful that this activity will reach to some logical conclusion with regards to the atrocities, the persecution, and the genocide which has taken place on Hindus in this country. With us, Aarti Agarwalji. Thank you, Aarti Agarwalji,
you.
for being with us and sharing
Thank you
your
so much.
enlightening
Yeah.
moments with us. Thank you, viewers, for being with us. This is Ajay Khosa with Akriti Raina. Thank you for watching Upload.